one of the people in the tribute video, Tony Dungy. Now, how were you asked by Fritzy to be in the bar mitzvah video?
It was quite a while ago, and he said, hey, Jordan's having a bar mitzvah. Would you mind sending him a congratulatory video? And it was fun to do. It's awesome.
Did you consider saying no?
Not to Todd, no.
Oh, you couldn't?
Could not turn him down.
Because you don't like to see a grown man cry.
No, he put a lot into it, and it's pretty awesome, actually, to be part of it.
All right, you heard the discussion between me and McLevin about Cam Newton. And McLevin has a hard time sort of defining Cam Newton, that he's not that polished pocket quarterback who puts up fantasy numbers here. How good is Cam Newton in your opinion? Where does he rank with quarterbacks now?
He's a special weapon, and you have to defend him differently, and you put a lot of people around him, and what you have to do with Cam, he's playing great. He's carrying the team. Rodney had that, remember a couple of years ago, they should take him out. But no, Cam gives people a lot of headaches.
I'd like to see him with weapons. If I put him in Cincinnati or put him in Atlanta, would Cam Newton be able to hold his own with the numbers that Andy Dalton puts up or Matty Ice?
It'd be different kind of numbers, but he would win. You defend all of those weapons, and then you've got the threat of him running and what you have to do to stop him. It makes everybody else better. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a Cam Newton fan.
We tend to skew negative because that's where you get clicks and the most headlines here. Let me start with the Dolphins. Should Joe Philbin be fired?
I never, and I said last night, I never like to see coaches fired in the middle of the year because it usually doesn't help. But I've been surprised at the lack of passion, the lack of energy they've come out these last 3 weeks. But a lot of this you have to put on the defense. They went all in and said, we had a good defense last year. We're going to pay a ton of money, get Ndamukong Suh, maybe the second or third best defensive player in the league, and now we're going to be a great defense. And they aren't. And they've been terrible, and I don't know what the reason for it, but to me, I'm blaming that more than I'm blaming the head coach.
Are we asking Ndamukong Suh to be something he's not, and that is a leader?
Yeah, and I'm. You don't have to lead, but you got to make some plays. For me, if I'm paying you that kind of money, I'm expecting some plays. I look at that position, that defensive tackle position, Warren Sapp, J.J. Watt. Give me that type of productivity, and we're going to be okay. And we just haven't seen that yet. But that's what happens a lot of times, especially with defensive players. You take them out of the system that they've been in. You think you're going to get the same thing, and you don't. But I'll tell you one tip-off, though. Detroit had a chance to sign this guy and pay, and they didn't. So that buyer beware.
Colin Kaepernick, Paulie brought up Colin Kaepernick, and we're watching somebody that Ron Jaworski, and the reason why I mentioned Jaws is he said he could turn out to be the best quarterback of all time. We tend to jump to conclusions. We want to be ahead of the curve. Colin Kaepernick may not be the starting quarterback next year.
I don't know what's happened to him, but we talk about Cam's situation and weaponry. Now, there was a time when you had Frank Gore and you had Vernon Davis playing great and
Bolden.
Crabtree and Bolden, and he created so much, and you had to defend all those guys and him running. So now he's down a little bit in weaponry. I think they've tried to do something with him that maybe he's not. It looks terrible right now, and he's better than that. I don't think he's the greatest of all time, but he's certainly better than what he's playing right now.
Well, Rodney Harrison said this last night. He said, I just don't think he understands defense. I don't think he sees and is able to process that. It feels like he was able to react to a certain degree, and he had weapons there, and Jim Harbaugh is his head coach.
And I think that's part of it. I think Jim Harbaugh said, we're going to take what this guy does best and accentuate it and use it. And they had some stuff for him that was great, and he looked comfortable. And so I'm not one that, well, he can't do this and he can't do that. He did some things really well, and he was hard to defend at one point 2 years ago, and it's just not there now.
Does benching help a quarterback?
I don't think so. People say,
but a temporary benching for him.
I had that with Trent Dilfer. When we were in Tampa. We just were starting to get good, and Trent played well, and then he went through a stretch that he didn't play as well, and it was definitely a last resort. I didn't want to do it, and when I did it, when I benched him, it wasn't, he'll get better and we'll put him back in. I said, no, this is it. We're going to go with Eric Zier. Eric got hurt, and we put Trent back in, and he played great. He played great for about 6 weeks, and then he got hurt. But I guess it can help at times, but usually when you bench a quarterback, you're saying, I don't think you're good enough. And when you tell a quarterback that, it usually doesn't help.
We're looking at confidence, and usually it's with quarterbacks. Now it's kickers, Tony.
I don't understand what's happening with these kickers.
I understand we moved the extra point back, but these guys, I mean, they're missing field goals, not just extra points.
It is unbelievable. And these guys can kick balls, and they kick in practice, and they'll kick 45 in a row. And now you get out there, and you've got to make this kick, and you don't make it. And I just haven't been around that many guys. I had Gary Anderson when I was in Pittsburgh as a young coach, and then Nick Lowry, and ended up with Mike Vanderjagt, Adam Vinatieri, guys who are going to make 99% of the every time you send them out there, you think you're going to make it. So to me, what Mike Tomlin went through on Thursday night, you say, if I put this guy out there, he's not going to make this kick. So I've got to coach differently. It's just. Boy, that's hard.
But how do you prepare? How do you practice pressure for a kicker?
You really can't. You can't simulate things. I've had that in practice. Hey, if you make this kick, no practice tomorrow. If you miss it, we're going to run sprints. You can't simulate what's going on at the end of a game. Guys either have that or they don't. And, the good kickers have it.
Can you yell at it? Normally, you don't see a coach yell at a kicker. But let's say a defensive lineman does something stupid. Coaches will get in their face and yell, but nobody ever yells at the kicker. Like they're so afraid. Oh my God, are they too fragile mentally?
You're always worried about it because you don't know how to coach them either. If a guy makes a mistake as a defensive back, I know how to fix that. If Adam misses a kick, I don't know what he did wrong, so I just make it next time. But the greatest line I ever heard about that, John McKay when he was starting in Tampa and kind of doing that same thing. Bill Capice was the kicker, and he missed a couple in practice, and McKay's looking at him. He said, Coach, I wish you wouldn't look at me like that. And he said, well, I will be at the games on Sunday, so I will be watching. You better learn how to kick with me watching you.
One of our favorite pieces of memorabilia here in the Man Cave is Ryan Leaf's jersey that was made up by the Colts. Had the Colts taken him instead of Peyton Manning, and Ryan was nice enough to give us that jersey. When we come back, I know you weren't there on draft night when they took Peyton Manning, but you were there a couple years later. I want to know how close it was that the Colts were going to take Ryan Leaf than Peyton Manning. We'll continue with Tony Dungy right after this. Your phone call's coming up. Dan Patrick Show.